Hi everyone, my name is Samantha Dietz, and today I'll be presenting my behavioral cybersecurity project proposal titled Security Alert Overload, the Risk of Notification Fatigue. This project explores how receiving too many security alerts can cause people to start ignoring them, even when real threats are involved. It's an issue many of us experience, but it has not been studied much in the cybersecurity field, and that's why I wanted to focus on it. We all know security notifications are important, but when they become overwhelming, their effectiveness can decrease. This research looks into that exact problem, how user behavior changes when the alerts become too frequent or repetitive. Let's start with the motivation and purpose behind the study. Most of us deal with an overwhelming number of notifications each day, especially related to security. Think about how often you get reminders to change your password, verify your identity, especially when multi-factor authentication is involved, or even updating software. Over time, these alerts become so frequent that we start to tune them out, a phenomenon known as notification or alert fatigue. It's been studied in healthcare and aviation, but not as much in cybersecurity. We know that humans have limits when it comes to processing information. If a person receives the same type of message repeatedly without real consequences, they begin to ignore it, which is a natural thing. It becomes background noise. In cybersecurity, that is very dangerous because it means users might miss the one alert that actually signals a threat that is happening or could happen. The purpose of this project is to explore that tipping point, the moment when helpful reminders become distractions in your everyday work life. Understanding where that point lies can help developers and organizations build more effective notification systems that people do pay attention to. When I started looking more into this topic, I noticed a research gap. Most behavioral cybersecurity research is focused on teaching people how to avoid phishing emails or how to create strong passwords. Very little looks at what happens after those lessons, when users are actually receiving real notifications. In contrast, industries like healthcare have spent years studying alert fatigue and how it can lead to misdiagnoses or errors. Cybersecurity has not caught up yet and essentially have years to catch up. For example, doctors and nurses in hospitals often ignore beeping from alarms from machines because of how often and frequent they happen, which does lead to real consequences. I think the same thing can happen with users at work or even at home who receive constant security messages. My research question is, how does the number of alerts affect whether someone responds to a real threat? Are they still paying attention, or have they tuned everything out? And if so, how can we go about changing that? For research objectives and hypotheses, I've defined two main objectives for this study. First, I want to measure how people actually respond when they get bombarded with different types of alerts, especially how they act when a legitimate threat does come through. Second, I want to gauge how people perceive the urgency and credibility in the alerts depending on how many they've seen before. If someone sees 10 notifications in a row, does the 11th get taken seriously, or do they ignore them? My first hypothesis is that more low priority alerts will lead to worse behavior when something important finally happens. The second hypothesis is that fewer, higher quality alerts will lead to quicker and better responses. These ideas are built on behavioral concepts like desensitization, where exposure to repeated stimuli it dulls our reaction, and cognitive overload, where people stop processing new information because there's just too much. This kind of insight is critical when designing alert systems that can actually help users. Here's how I plan to do my experiment. I will recruit 80 adult participants between the ages of 18 and 50, and then randomly assign them to one of two groups. Each group will use a simulated email system that actually mimics what we might see in a work environment. They'll complete unrelated tasks to simulate that real distraction, like reviewing files or replying to mock messages, as one would in the workday. Group A will receive 10 notifications over the course of the session. The majority, 8 of them, will be low priority things, as in password reminders or just general tips. Only 2 of them will be real threats. Group B, on the other hand, will only receive 3 notifications, but all of them will be critical. I'll track how long they take to respond to each alert, whether they open or ignore them, and what kind of follow-up actions they take. Afterward, we'll ask them to rate how urgent they felt the alerts were. This design helps us isolate whether alert fatigue actually changes user behavior. If we find that Group A ignores threats more often than Group B, we will have strong evidence that too many notifications can create risk and not reduce it. And again, to reiterate, the data collected during this experiment would be key performance indicators, as in their response time to security threats, their click-through behavior on the alerts, and the urgency ratings, as in a post-task survey, and then follow-up security actions like resetting passwords or contacting IT if they were in a real working environment. These are all of the references that I've used in this experiment, and they have helped shape my thinking for this project. Some of them look at alert fatigue in healthcare and workplace systems, while the others examine how people respond to different types of cybersecurity warnings. Together, they do highlight that user behavior is a complex thing, and if we want to improve cybersecurity outcomes, we do need to understand the how and why people tune out the very tools that are designed to protect them. In conclusion, some ways to decrease fatigue in users would be to start fine-tuning alerts, as well as using automation and playbooks to help. Another method to alleviate notification fatigue is that one could consider looking into having a managed detection and response team, which would be having a third party become your SOC team for dealing with security alerts. Thank you for your time and watching this presentation, and feel free to ask any questions that you have for me.